All right, guys, let's jump into today's mixing project here in Survey of Audio Engineering. I'm going to go to my mixing project session options, and if you click on that, it should bring you into a window with the different options we've got available that you can mix as your group. So I'm just going to pick one here, this moveon.band, and go to the right-hand side and download that. So click and download, and that should start downloading. I'm going to save it directly onto the desktop. So if you don't see the desktop there, you can always toggle that open and click and change to the desktop so that we'll save it there. So as it's downloading, what we're going to do is open this up and start to go through the process of this mix project. So working as a team, you're going to select a song. We've just done that. And using the signal processing tools we've been learning about, make as good of a mix as you can. So I'm going to demonstrate that right here. And you can follow along if you want to use this exact same song and try to use volume and panning, some equalization and filters, compression and dynamics, as well as some effects to create a better version of the mix. Now you can just watch this video for a couple minutes, pause it, switch over to GarageBand and repeat those same steps in your sessions if you like, and that'll probably make it a lot easier for you to both follow along and complete your first mix, hopefully that's going to sound pretty good by the end. So let's go ahead and go find this. It's appeared down here at the bottom. If I click on that, it'll expand and hopefully take me straight to it. If it doesn't, I just need to go to my Finder on my desktop, and there's my moveon.band file. So let's go ahead, I'm going to delete that zip file, and let's just open this up, and we'll jump straight into starting the mix. So as this loads up, you can see it's kind of got a bunch of different tracks on it. If you've never used GarageBand, I'll do a quick tour of the interface, but if you just hit the space bar, that'll play and stop the track so you can hear what it sounds like initially.
I almost lost my mind.
All right. So we've got a whole bunch of tracks playing. They're all currently just set to unity gain, so the volume is set the same level. They're all panned dead center, so you can hear everything sounds kind of dense and in our face.
I almost lost my mind.
So we need to go through and start rebalancing this and go through the mix. Let's jump on that together. All right, first things first, we need to make sure we understand some basic navigation. So you can turn on this little cycle button also with the C key, or you can just click on it, and that will create a little region that will loop over and over, which is really nice actually when we're mixing. You can also simply click here in this top ruler where you see the bars of the song and click and drag, and that will give you a new ruler or a new selection of cycle length. You can also simply click in this area below it and hit play, and if your cycle is turned off, it will play from wherever, it will play from wherever your playhead is. So if you have cycle turned on, it'll play that by default. And if you have that turned off, it'll play wherever your playhead is. Okay, so what we want to do is first pick a section, typically of the song that has almost everything in it, because then we can go through and set our levels and move things around our virtual stage left and right with our pan knobs so that everything fits. So when I look around the song, I find several different spots. Any of these kind of choruses seem like they have everything playing at full volume. And if we can make stuff fit when everything is playing, then we should be able to make it all fit even during the quieter parts of the song. So I'm just going to come up here to like bar 81, it looks like, and just click and drag up in there until I've got this section outlined. So if you hit the space bar to play, you see it plays and is going to play over this section. Great. So step one, we got to start rebalancing our tracks, because even hitting play, we see how loud and distorted this is. So I'm going to go ahead and just come in here and turn down kind of everything. I'm going to pull down all these tracks, and that is going to give us a starting point where we can quickly just start adding back in and building a basic mix. So I'm going to pull all these faders down, and let's just go through and do our volumes and pans first. So of course, when I hit space bar now, nothing is audible, but let's go ahead and bring up the kick drum. So you can come in and you could either click and drag it up, or one quick way to do this is to hold down the Option key on your keyboard and click on this fader, and that's going to throw it straight up to what we call unity gain, or basically 0. It's not going to boost the signal, it's not going to cut the signal. So that's a quick way, just holding down the Alt or Option button and clicking on these brings these up. Okay, so now even at unity, you can see we've got a good strong signal level. It's not clipping, it's not going into the yellows, and it's certainly not going into the reds. So alt clicking is not a bad way to just start these as a decent place to balance it out. Now, when I think about mixes and the sounds that I always should be able to hear, Typically things like our kick, our snare, maybe our bass, and definitely our lead vocal are always going to be these present elements. Go listen to any of your favorite songs that have those instruments in them, and you'll find even as you turn them down, a lot of the times the last things you hear are a little bit of that kick, snare, bass, and vocals. So I'm going to go down and see if I can just create a balance by alt-clicking on this lead vocal, alt-clicking on the bass, and let's try to balance these just with our faders until we've got a good blend of each. So that vocal is pretty loud. I'm going to try to bring her down until she's not clipping here. All right, now let's balance the bass. I don't want the bass overshadowing the vocal, of course, so I'm adjusting this level, and you can see the volume changing in dB until I have it supporting the vocal underneath it, but not overwhelming the vocal. So that's overwhelming the vocal. This is supporting the vocal. Okay. Now we can always continue to go through and do a little bit more, but as a starting point, I'm trying to make sure that there's an even balance. If you've got an interesting balance or something, if the song would work with kick, snare, bass, and lead vocals and just sound kind of empty, but it's still balanced well, you're in a good spot. All right, so that feels pretty good. So even right now, we're kind of lining them up in the middle. So now let's go in and start to fill in the sides. So I'm going to go in and bring up stuff like my overheads. If I hit play, I can option click on these again and throw up these overheads. Now they're pretty loud, so I'm going to bring these down a little ways, maybe about -7 dB, give or take, and let's see how that sounds. Now the other thing we're going to do is start to look at panning these out. So if my overheads, if I think of them as two microphones over or picking up the left and right side of my drum kit, I probably want to pan one to the left and pan the other one to the right. They're even named that way, overheads left and right. All right, now that's getting somewhere. All right. Bass guitar I'm probably going to leave in the center, but now I've got these other instruments like piano as well as a stereo piano and a single guitar. So if I bring these up, obviously alt-clicking on it puts it up at unity, which is way too loud. Where am I going to spread things like this piano though? If I look at the piano and solo this out with the solo button for a second, and option click. Okay, what if I solo both the piano and the guitar? Piano is obviously way quieter than the guitar. Let's bring this guitar way down, maybe 13, 14 dB. Now in this case, I might actually add in this left piano as well and balance it since both of those are going to make up the piano sound. All right, so if I'm starting to balance those, I can always click and swipe across these solo buttons to turn them off. All right, now here's where, as I'm starting to balance these out, I can go in and continue to add these others, like this doubling lead vocal and these background vocals. Well, I'm noticing something pretty funny about this, and that is that I've got two lead vocal tracks, and the one I turned up earlier was not the lead vocal. Always going to be worth checking that. I'm going to alt-click on this other lead vocal and put it in place and bring down our the lead vocals. Must be a double. Here we go.
Someone who can't tell night from day, and I know sometimes
there we go.
I may not recognize where I'm going.
I feel like these overheads are still a little hot. I'm going to back them down. Guitars and pianos still kind of fighting. And again, you can always just go in and keep bringing things down. We can always turn it up later. But if you find that it's walking over the vocal or it's getting in the way of the vocal, we want to make sure that we're not doing that.
Someone who can't tell night from day.
All right, now the other thing we can do is start to bring in these last couple vocals, this doubled vocal and the backing box.
Someone who can't tell
Let's pull it. I'm going to start with it all the way down and pull it up so that as they sing, I want to hear it come in and support this main lead vocal, but not overshadow it. So let's just let it loop, and I'm going to turn it up until I hear it kind of thickening the vocal, but not overshadowing it.
someone who can't tell night from day. And I know sometimes I may not recognize where I'm going.
Well, that's actually pretty cool. Let's try these backing vocals and do the same.
Someone who can't tell night from day. Someone who can't tell night from day.
Nice.
And I know sometimes I may not recognize.
All right, so we're starting to get a good balance here. Now we've panned our overheads left and right. We haven't messed with these toms yet, but let's pan these guitars. We wouldn't pile our guitar player and our piano on top of one another in the center of the stage. So maybe if we're going to put our guitar over towards the left somewhere, we could even put him all the way on the left. If we're going to do that, we should probably move this piano, maybe both sides of it, towards the right side of the stage. So now guitar on the left, piano on the right. Let's see if that works.
Someone who can't tell night from day.
And maybe if I don't want it,
Sometimes
maybe I don't want it all the way to the left, I'll just put it mostly to the left.
someone who can't tell night from day.
And rebalance.
And I know sometimes I may not recognize where I'm going, right or wrong.
All right.
I won't be told that.
Let's do the same thing with these backing vocals. I'm going to put one of them over on the left and the other one all the way on the right. And maybe take this lead vocal or this lead vocal doubling and maybe pan it just slightly to the right. Just move it to where it's like singers side by side rather than both in the same microphone.
Someone who can't tell night from day.
Nice.
And I know sometimes I may not recognize where I'm going,
All right.
right or wrong. I won't.
Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Now we do have these other two little toms in here. In that case, we could try to minimize the impact of them on the mix. If I alt-click and turn it up, let's hear what this tom sounds like. I'm also going to solo it so we can listen to it. So this actually has a bunch of garbage in it. A little bleed, and honestly, that tom doesn't sound very good. If I zoom in on it, which I'm doing either with the little zoom button up here in the upper right-hand corner, you can do it, or I'm holding down the option key and scrolling on my mouse. Either way, that tom doesn't sound great. In fact, let me just click and swipe up here so it just loops around this one tom. Not great. So, but in the meantime, let me just turn that down. They don't use the toms a whole lot in this song, and they're getting picked up in the overheads, so we might end up muting those. But at this point, if I hit play, I think we've balanced our track out pretty well. I could come over and just make a couple other selections for loops and just check it at different parts of the song.
Be told the do's and don'ts by someone who can tell night from day.
All right.
And I know some.
And honestly, that's working pretty well. So if we need to take a screenshot of our mix and our pans, we can go ahead and on the Mac, we're going to use Shift-Command-4. And Shift-Command-4 is going to give us a little crosshairs that we can either click and drag over the whole screen, and that will give us a screenshot of the entire track or of the entire screen so that we can see that and upload that for our project later. So now that we've got our initial faders, volumes, and pans set, let's go ahead and take a look at the next step in the mixing process. All right, now we're going to take a look at starting to clean up some of the low end of these tracks. So in the upper left-hand corner, go ahead and click on each of those four buttons. You're going to notice what they do. The left one is going to open up different options for effect settings. The help button is going to turn on displays and kind of pop-up displays telling you what each button does. It also shows you when you hover over it, you're going to notice that it shows, for example, the smart controls. You can hit the B key, and that's going to turn on your smart controls. So you can just click on that button to show it or hide it. And then this other one is going to show your editing specifically. So when you go to this editors button, E would toggle that open. When you click on either of those or any of these, it's going to open and close these panels. And down inside of here, you're going to notice a few other panels. So if when you turn one of these on, you don't see everything that you're expecting, you can click through these couple other panels to look at, for example, specific settings for the track, specific settings for the master track, the master fader. And then once you've clicked on those, you'll see, for example, on the track, you can look at controls for any plugins that are currently on it, as well as its EQ. So we're going to go through and do this real quick, and I'm just going to walk you through the track. And the next step of this is removing excess low frequencies with high pass filtering. So let's just start on the snare track. And what I'm going to do is come down here and click on this analyzer button and hit play. And you can see every time he hits the snare drum, we're seeing the snare drum hit right here, and there's not a whole lot of excess low frequencies over here on the low side, but if we go through and we click on some of these other tracks and turn on their analyzer, you can see, for example, that these drum overheads have a whole lot of the kick drum bleeding into the track, bleeding into those drum overheads. So let's go straight to these overheads, and I'm going to turn on this high pass filter, and I'm going to roll off the excess lows. So I'm going to turn off this help button real quick and solo this out. And now when I hit play, I'm going to pull this filter up until we remove, see how much it's removing those excess low frequencies? So I'm going to go through and do that to each of these tracks that maybe has some excess low frequencies on it. Solo it out, turn on my high pass filter, and roll it up. And that should eliminate a lot of that kick drum bleed. Maybe go to these toms, see if there's anything on there. Not really, because they're not playing all that much, but I could still turn it on anyway. And I'm adding these high pass filters, and I'm just trying to remove anything that's not really helping this song. So the bass guitar, I'm probably not going to remove too much, but if I select the bass and I turn on the analyzer, I can see that's where all his low frequencies are. So what we're doing by eliminating the low frequencies on those overheads is we're making space for this bass guitar to occupy the low frequencies. Now maybe do this guitar, turn on the analyzer. There's not a whole lot of excess low frequencies here, but I do see here's where all of his energy is. Turn on that high pass filter. Maybe just remove those lowest lows. Maybe look at the piano and do the same thing. Turn on the analyzer so I can see it. Looks like they might have already cut off all these excess lows. But I'm still going to turn it on and just remove the lowest lows from here so that the bass guitar can occupy that. All right, maybe even on this vocal.
Where I'm going.
Yeah, you can see there's some excess low frequencies there. Let's turn on the filter. Notice if you pull it too high, you cut off all of her low frequencies. So we just want to cut off these ones that really aren't helping her track. Check this one. Analyzer, turn on the filter, and let's just cut off anything below where her vocals are. Yeah, again, we still see some excess lows there. So we're using these high pass filters to go ahead and just remove anything on the lowest end that is not helpful to this track. You can see all of her energy is up here. So great. Once we've got that, maybe even come over here and just draw around this little spot. Select it, analyzer, turn on our filter, cut off the excess. So very quickly, we have eliminated a whole bunch of the excess low frequencies on this track. So when I come and I click over to the master, click on the EQ itself, I can look at this master track, turn on the analyzer, and I have removed a whole bunch of the excess. And you should hear that kick drum and bass guitar cutting through now because they're the only things playing in that super low frequency. Nice. All right, so that's gone through and we've done our high pass filtering. Let's go ahead and take a screenshot of some of that so that we can submit it. Maybe go to these overheads, look at the track, look at the EQ. Perfect. I'm going to go take a screenshot of that. Shift, Command, and the 4 key. So hold down Shift and Command and then reach up and hit 4. You'll see your little mouse will turn into a crosshair, and I can literally click and just drag across this so that we can see the high pass filtering in action. Cool, so we've seen that in action, and now we're ready to move on to the next step. All right, the next step, we're just going to do a very basic introduction to noise gating, and we can start simply with something like this tom. So if I come over and I solo this tom out and I hit play, I'm just going to have any selection where it's actually going to play a couple of these toms. You could also zoom in on it so we can see where these toms hit. And let me just select a little chunk over this. So when it plays, and I turn it up, of course, you hear there's some background noise, and then that tom comes through. Now, it doesn't give us a whole lot of options for noise gating, but we can come down to the controls for this track, and then there will be plugins where we can see what the plugins are for this track, as well as just a simple option to turn on or off a noise gate. Now, if you take other classes, of course, you'll see deeper levels rather than just on or off. But once I hit play on this, what I want it to do is obviously cut out anything that's not the tom. So I just turned it on, and I'm going to hit play, and let's listen and see if it cuts out that background noise. Not really. So let's just turn this up, raise the threshold, until we hear all the background noise gone. Now that tom is just not great, but this is at least doing a good job of cutting off the excess. Let's do the same thing with these other toms. I'm going to come over here, find a little section where the toms are actually playing, solo that one out, alt-click on it to turn it up, and let's go to this one and turn on the noise gate as well. Okay, and let's see if it's cutting out all the background noise. Yeah, I don't hear anything else. So at this point, even though I'm not a big fan of the way these toms sound, at least we've turned on the noise gate and we've adjusted this threshold until all the background noise is gone. So if I turn off cycle, I should be able to hit play and hear nothing until these toms get hit. Okay, it's even clipping a little bit, so I think they just probably should have deleted these tracks. But in the meantime, let's do Shift Command 4 and go ahead and select over our noise gate as well as the tracks. Boom. So we've now taken a screenshot of our noise gate in action as well. Now there's really not any other tracks on here that I would put this particular noise gate on. They're all mostly playing in time, but that way we've at least removed the bleed and the background noise from these tom tracks. All right, on the next section, we need to add compression to rein in the dynamic range of some of these tracks, make the vocals consistently audible, maybe even out the volume levels of some of these others, because again, compression, we're going to start by reducing the loud parts, and then once we've reduced the loud parts to where they're closer in volume to the quiet parts, we're going to average that level out or use the makeup gain to bring it up a little bit. Now in GarageBand, again, they've simplified it down to a single knob. You turn on the compressor, and as you turn the amount up, it will actually start to squash the loud parts down, and then it's going to automatically make up the gain on the back end. So it's one of the nice things about GarageBand, although as you get used to being able to use a limiter, it's kind of limiting. So let's go ahead and go to the kick drum. I'm going to come down, and you see I've got my compressor here. I do need to be looking at the track. So let's just start with a kick drum. I've gone to my track, and then since I'm not recording, I can toggle that up. And down here you see all the plugins. So we didn't use the kick drum or the noise gate on this because the kick drum's it does have a little bit of bleed, but not a lot. We could turn on the noise gate if we wanted, but I'm going to go ahead and, well, let's just see. I'm going to turn it on and see. Even raising this threshold. Sounds a little clicky. So since I can't adjust the noise gate more specifically, I'm going to turn that off. Let's go to the compressor though and hover over the left-hand side where you see this on button and turn that on. I'm going to open this compressor up by clicking on the little settings right here, this little settings section in the middle, and go and let's just choose a preset. So I'm going to go to my drums and look in here for something like a rock kick drum, since this is kind of a rock sound. And let's go ahead and hit play and hear how this sounds. And you can use this big on and off button to adjust it. And you hear that it's both raising the overall level. There you go. So for our purposes there, we've adjusted this. If we wanted it to be a little bit louder, we could use the makeup gain. Turn it up even more. But you can tell it's already starting to get close to clipping here. So I'm going to undo that, bring that back down to about 4 dB. Okay, let's solo the snare drum. Look at it. Go and turn on its compressor, open its settings up, and look for something like a snare drum. How about a snare top? Definitely getting more of that snare drum. Let's look at the overheads. Selecting them, you can see I can come down, turn on their compressor, open it up, And let's look at something like this, maybe rock overheads. Probably need to solo it so we can hear it. All right, do this next one, turn on its compressor, and do the same thing. Drums, rock overheads. Boy, really starting to get a good sound there. We're gonna leave the toms alone for a second, go to the bass guitar, unsolo all those. Bass guitar, turn on his compressor, plug in, maybe guitars, bass heavy, bass light. Let's just try a couple of them and see if there's anything that sounds good. Wow. You can turn it on and off to hear the difference. And you hear how it's evening that volume out over time. Really good. So bass light's pretty nice. Let's try bass heavy. Well, let's hear it in context. I'm gonna unsolo this, and then I'm gonna just mute all these other tracks. You can actually click and swipe like it's one screen. So now let's hear it with our drums and the plugin so far. Nice. Boy, I really hate those tom sounds. Pull them down even lower. Let's try direct bass. Turn the compressor on and off. I'm going to go back to that bass light. So find a preset that you like. Going to maybe raise its gain up a little bit here. Maybe have to turn down these overheads a little bit now. All right, cool, we're getting somewhere. Let's go ahead and solo the guitar, do the same thing. On with its compressor, open it up, try something like guitar, and let's just see how this sounds. Maybe guitar electric. Now that makes it pretty loud. Compressor off. It's a little quieter. Loud parts and quiet parts. Compressor on. Evens that volume out. Let's try it on the piano. Come to the piano. Compressor on. See if there's anything in here that might work for piano. Keyboards. Try piano. And again, turn it on and off. Could use a little more gain on it. So I'm going to turn up this makeup gain. Could also just try a different one. It's not bad. In fact, I might just try that on the other one. Solo this piano, compressor on, keyboards. Now we're getting a lot more consistent volume out of that. Probably need to adjust our levels here. And you can see exactly what level I'm setting them to. Volume currently -8. Let's unsolo and see how these are sounding. All right, sounded pretty good. Last couple things, let's go ahead and do that on the vocals. Gonna bring these guys in, solo them out, turn on a compressor, go find a nice voice. Let's just try bright vocal, first one.
From day,
turn it on and off.
And I know sometimes I may not recognize.
It's definitely evening out the level of the vocals a little bit right there. Could try some others.
From day, and I know sometimes I may not recognize.
Kind of like that classic vocal.
Where I'm going right.
It's a little edgy for me, no pun intended.
I won't be told the do's and don'ts.
Now this one just has a lot of makeup gain. Let's go back. I really like that bright vocal. Let's go back and try that bright vocal again. And every vocal you're going to try is going to be a little different. Don't forget to turn it on and off and see if it's helping.
And I know sometimes I may not recognize.
Nice. I'm going to crank up the gain just a little bit. And let's check this doubled vocal. Maybe do the same thing. Compressor on. Pick a setting.
From day, and I know sometimes I may not recognize.
Maybe try a different sound.
Where I'm going, right or wrong.
I like that sound. Let's try them together.
From day, And I know sometimes
Let's try these last two, these backing vocals, and see how they sound. I like to just pick a tiny little section where they're going to just play over and over.
this ain't no, not for a day. This ain't no, not for
I like that medium vocal setting, so I'm going to put it on both of these.
this
That way they kind of match.
not for a day. This
Might need to adjust their volume
not for a day.
and on solo. And let's see how these are sounding. Go ahead and throw that same thing on this last vocal. Just kind of checking different ones.
This ain't no, not for
And play that.
gotta move on. Move
Okay, so we're just going through and we're trying different settings, seeing how it sounds, how it feels.
I won't let
Definitely
this
making a difference, though.
end, no, not for a day.
Okay, we probably need to do a little more rebalancing, maybe bring some of these tracks down a little bit. And let's just see how they start to sound.
I won't let this end, no, not for a day. I won't.
All right, so at that point, we've got our compression. We've done this. Let's go ahead and pick one of these compressors to take a screenshot of. I'm going to come down and open up this screenshot, so I've got it here. I don't think, if we come to some of these others, I don't think we can open up multiple different plugin windows, unfortunately. So I'm just going to go to my lead vocal and grab the compressor here so that I can see what I've got. Shift Command 4 and take a screenshot of the compressor turned on and what track it's on. Wonderful. So now we've got that in place. And even as you hit play,
I won't let this end,
you can see this compressor's on.
for a day.
And if you want more, you can just turn up the amount here.
I won't let this end, no, not for a day.
But it's sounding pretty good. So that has gotten us through this next section using compression, and we're going to jump in and look at some EQ next. All right, next step, we got to find and utilize some EQ. So let's kind of take this same approach. Again, this is a very simple kind of introductory guide to mixing, but I'm going to go through and see if we can find some EQ that works better for this these different tracks. So as I bring this kick drum up, I'm going to come down to the channel EQ. And so I've got the kick drum selected. I came down, I'm making sure I'm using the track setting and looking at the controls. We also have EQ down here if we'd rather view it that way. But if you're in controls, you can just come over and click on the EQ middle of it, and that will give you these settings. So I'm going to turn on my analyzer and look at what this kick drum is doing and just select a section of the song where the kick drum is playing consistently.
Someone who can
And let's
tell
solo it. All right, so the kick drum we did not roll off any low frequencies on, but up here we can go and look at different EQ options. So for example, if I come to my drums, I can go and look for things like, well, what if I cleaned up the kick? Let's just try it. Wow, creates a very interesting curve, boosting a little bit of the low frequencies here around 50, cutting here just under 200 and 500. Produces a very rock sounding kick drum. Turn this on and off to hear the difference. Makes actually a pretty big difference. I might like that cleanup kick. Let's see if there's any others. Interesting. Doing the same thing. It's boosting a little bit of lows, cutting the low mids, adding a little bit on the highs. That's a little too death metal of a kick drum for me. Modern kick drum. So go through and find one that fits for your song. I actually like this cleanup kick. It's pretty good. I'm gonna go to my snare drum next, solo it out, open up its EQ. Let's try some different snare drums. Drums, how about clean up snare? Interesting, turn it on and off. I kind of like that. We could of course try several different things. A little more natural, but a little bright for me. In this case, it's kind of ringing a little bit. So find the one that you like. I can certainly go through. I like this one okay. But you're going to take your time, give them a listen. I'm going to stick with clean up snare. Let's Let's try some overheads. Just going to solo one at a time and see if I can find something. Open up their EQ. You notice I've already rolled off the low frequencies there. I'm going to come in and try drums, see if we can find any overhead sounds. Rock snare, standard hi-hat, room microphones. Let's try that. Let's add some sizzle to it for sure. Maybe we like that. Overhead mic. Okay, you notice both of those are just adding some highs. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and say, I could go with room microphones, but I'm going to have to turn back on this filter to cut off all the kick drum that's making it here in these overheads. I like that. So let's go ahead and do that. For these next overheads, do the same thing. Open their EQ, choose a setting, drums, room microphones again. I'm going to go ahead and cut off those excess lows where that kick drum is. Now let's see how they sound. I'm going to solo all of them. Nice. That sounds pretty good. So we've got this. We've started to go through the process. Repeat this process. Go through the different tracks. Open up your sounds. And let's try to dial some of that stuff in. So on this bass guitar, I could get that compressor back on. Starting to get somewhere. Bass guitar. Let's pop on a guitar. Try some of these different ones. Solo it out. EQ. Guitar. Let's just try something. Interesting. I kind of like that one. Let's see how it blends with the drums. Nice. Okay. So we're getting somewhere. You're going to go through and do the exact same approach. I'm going to take my guitar here and just continue to work through. Try some different sounds. Guitar. It's kind of an interesting sound. I like that sweetener. I like that one. Grab the piano next. In this case, if I am finding my way on the piano, I'm going to click solo this piano again. Turn it on and off to see what you're doing to it. In my case, just going to keep trying some different ones. That's a little too warm. For this one, I like that. But again, I'm going to roll off some of these excess lows so that the kick and bass can hold those down. Original piano. Now, good. All right, so I'm going to just keep going through these. So this next one. So I went with piano high on that. Let's try this left side of the piano. Keyboards. Let's try piano low. Nah, it doesn't work very well. I like that one. Still roll off some excess lows. Let's see how that sounds. If I solo both of these, and come through and you can see what it sounds like without the plugins by just clicking on these little power buttons to turn them off. So here's the piano we started with. And now here's where we're at. Nice. All right. So as we continue through these, we've got some vocals left to do, and that's going to bring us through EQ. So once you've kind of dialed in some of these different settings, go ahead and grab a screenshot. So Shift Command 4, piano, and we can see the EQ that you used on your tracks. So the last step on our process is to go through, and we're going to use some effects like delay and or reverb to create some space, some depth in our mix. If I come and just select any chunk of this, like this little section we've been playing with, we've really kind of optimized each of the tracks using these other steps: volume, panning, filtering, some noise gates, a little compression, and EQ. So now let's go use the reverb, sends, and returns to start to push some of these instruments a little farther back so they all don't sound like they're right up against us. So by increasing the amount of reverberant or ambient sound Now we're going to start to be able to change that ratio of direct sound, which was recorded with the mic, and the reverb or ambience. And the less direct sound and more ambience we have, the more we're going to perceive it as being farther away. So let's go just kind of do that right off the bat. I like to start with my snare drum. Usually in the case of the kick, like in modern music, we're not usually going to add a whole lot of ambience to that. But the snare drum, we could go in and start to use the sends and returns to add that reverb in. Let's see what it sounds like. So if I were to increase this ambience, well, you notice one thing right now, simple mistake. I still have the kick drum selected. So I'm sitting here turning up the ambience on a track that I'm not actually even listening to. So it's easy to do. I'm going to pull that down and click on my snare drum. Now, so you hear as you increase the amount of it sending to the ambience, starts to give us just a little bit of that slap back, a little bit of those early reflections, which makes it seem a little farther away. So maybe I just want a little bit of that, but let's see what happens with this reverb. So if you turn it all the way up, you can hear this is going to a longer, larger sort of reverb, and I don't really want it to be quite that big. Every song's going to be different, but I'm just going to try to add enough little blend of ambience and reverb to maybe push this back just a little ways away from us. The ambience is kind of giving us some distance, and the reverb is giving us a tail. And again, nothing. Maybe enough ambience to give it a little bit of size. Reverb to just add a little bit of a tail. So let's solo this next one. Do the same thing. Do I need ambience? I don't know that I do. Maybe some reverb though. But again, you're doing your own mix. Just a little bit of ambience. Maybe some of that reverb. Adding a little bit of size. I'm going to go down, and you can actually use your up and down arrow keys to move between these. So I'm going to just arrow down and choose the same settings. Oops. So that one. Cool. Let's see how those sound. All right, it's not bad. Toms we could try. I'm just going to go straight to the bass guitar though. Am I going to benefit from anything on this bass guitar? Let's try some ambience. I really like the bass being closer, so if I'm going to use any ambience, it might just be a little bit right there. Definitely not reverb. I don't need a giant reverb on this bass. How about the guitar? Crank it up. Certainly starts to move him back a little ways, but I don't need that much. Nothing? Really far away? Maybe somewhere in here. Let's see what a little reverb does on his track. You can hear that with just a little bit of reverb, we've started to push him back too. I can go do the same thing with my pianos. And I like to just listen to one at a time. So here with no ambience, it's pretty close, pretty dry. Maybe I'm going to go with just a little more ambience in general. Arrow down to the next one. And let's solo it so we can hear them both. Yeah. Seems like that's working. How about this lead vocal? Okay, lead vocal.
I know sometimes I may not recognize
it's maybe a little too big.
Where I'm going right
is that a little reverb?
I won't be told that someone
I think I like that.
who can't tell night from day.
Try this one. Select it.
And I know sometimes I may not recognize where I'm
nice.
going.
Let's try these backing vocals. Add a little more reverb. I like that. Let's try this again. Nice. Just a little more ambience and reverb on those. Does sound nice. starts to push them back a little ways. Here's what they sound like without it. So I'm just creating this little bit of reverberant space. And let's try one more here. We've only got this one little line.
Move on.
Yeah.
Move on.
Nice. So we've added a little reverb and ambience to all of our tracks. Let's make a selection up here and just see how it sounds. All right. And we can continue to balance a little bit right here. But now that we've got this and we know what it's sounding like and we're liking that, let's go ahead and take a screenshot, Shift-Command-4 of our lead vocal, as well as these sends and reverb, so I can see how much is going to those. All right, so we're really starting to get a decent mix here. Of course, we could continue to blend or turn things up and down, but the last step is to bounce out our mix so that we can listen to it. All right, our last couple of steps, we got to make some delivery formats. Let's go ahead and come up to our cycle region and click on this cycle button to turn that off. The C key will also do that. Make sure that your song length, this little marker here, should be the length of your song. So you can hover up in this corner and that'll make it to where it's going to go over the entire song. And then one of our last things we want to do is make sure, let's come up to the track menu and let's do a show master track. Show master track is going to show this master track down here, and we're going to have a nice little fade out. We're going to add that in. So if I hit play and I play at this very end, we should hear this start to get to the end and the instruments kind of fade away. So in order to do this, we're going to use automation. If you hit the A key on your keyboard, you'll see that all of the tracks drop into automation view. So A will toggle that on and off so that we can see the volume of the tracks. So right now, if I come down to my master track, you can see it currently says display off. I'm going to click on that and change it to where I can see the volume of the master track. And by coming in here, we're going to zoom in over on the side and figure out where this ends. So let's play. Here it comes. All right. And about bar 115. Actually, about bar 116, we see it stop. So I'm going to come down here and double click, and that's going to put in my first automation point so that right where that song hits its ending point. And then I'm going to go and double click right after that to add another one. And by clicking, I can drag that down now. And that's actually going to create this gentle fade out where the song is going to fade away. Beautiful. I do want to make that a little bit longer though, so it fades a little more naturally. And out they go. So just a little bit of automation there. I'm going to go ahead and Shift-Command-4 to grab a screenshot of that as well, so I can see that I've got automation done. And now, once we've done that, hit the A key to drop back out of automation mode and go ahead and zoom out so we can see our whole session again. So I've now got all my screenshots. It's time to export our song, what we call a bounce to disk in Pro Tools. And to do that, we go up to our Share menu, Share, Export Song to Disk. Now inside of here, we could choose uncompressed files like a WAV or an AIF. That's going to be full resolution, 44:1 16-bit CD quality. We can also choose an MP3, which certainly lots of people and online stores utilize the MP3, and then Apple has their own kind of version called the AAC, which is what you would download, purchase from iTunes or other stores like that. It's a little bit higher quality, so I'm going to, in this case, just go ahead and choose a highest quality AAC. I'm going to go ahead and give this my name, so I'm going to call this Adam. Let's see, let's call it 1380, and last name, and it'll come out as an MP4 file. So once I've done this, I say last name. I'm going to go ahead and put in my actual last name, and let's hit export. And you see it's going through, bouncing this file out. And when it's done, if I look on the desktop, we're going to see this GarageBand mixing.mp4 has been created. And if I look at today, it was just saved, or there it is, M4A. If you open it up, you should hear your mix. And we've got our song ready to be turned in. Now, the last thing we need to do is pull together the screenshots so that we can upload those to Schoology as well. Okay, let's go find our screenshots. They should be on your desktop or in your pictures folder. I'm going to come over and I've already found those, located them here. And so when I look at these, what we want to do is go through and rename them according to the instructions: song title, your last name, first name, and section number. And then we're going to go ahead and put which of the things that we're showing. So let's come over here and just go through them. If I hit spacebar, I can open this up, or I can double click on it and that'll open it up in preview. So right now this is showing me the noise gate. So I'm going to come down, and first I'd like to just go through and make sure I've got them all. So that's going to be my compression. This one has my equalization, an example of equalization. This one has my reverb sends and returns. This one has, looks like maybe some sends and returns as well. This one's showing a little bit of automation, and this one is showing our volume and panning. So let's go ahead and name these accordingly. So this is going to be move on underscore Adam underscore Nathan underscore volume and panning. And I'm just going to actually, once I've got this selected, if you're not seeing it in this method, I prefer to use this detail view button right here rather than the icon view. Detail view will let me see these. So I can now just hit the return key, and the return key on my keyboard is going to put it into rename mode. I'm going to copy that with Command C, and that's going to copy that, hit return again, and now I can just come down to the next one and bring this up. Okay, so that's my automation. So return and paste, and I'm going to delete this and just call it automation. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just select these things, copy, and come to the next one. And this is going to be an example of my ambience send for my vocal. So boom, paste, and effects. Come down here. This one is, looks like actually the same thing. Let's open up this one. There's EQ, boom, EQ. Come to the next one, paste. This is compression, boom, compression. And this one shows noise gates. So boom, noise gates. Oh, paste, noise gates. There we go. So we've got our volume and panning, high pass filtering. Oh, I don't see our high pass filters. I guess with EQ, that's showing our high pass filtering. So maybe I'll just go back in and grab one more shot of my high pass filters. Guitar, open up his EQ, and high pass filter. There we go. So now that is copy, and let's call that high pass filters. Great. So that's going to give us everything named accordingly and ready to be uploaded to Schoology along with that final master mix. I'm going to go ahead and move all these over here. So I've got them ready to be uploaded, and let's go ahead and name this as well. Move on, Nathan mix. All right, so once we've got those, we're ready to upload our files to Schoology so that they can be checked, we can be graded, and we can go from there. So thanks so much for working on this project with us. Looks like it's been a great time, and we'll see you in class.